Welcome everyone. Welcome to CoMotion Miami 2026. We're delighted to have you here. My name's Tim Grabadi. I'm the Managing Director of CoMotion. We're absolutely delighted to see so many of you bright and early, and thank you also for joining us at 8 a.m. for the public sector breakfasts. We are so honored to be in Miami-Dade County, so honored to be at Miami Dade College. We really want to thank Mayor Levine Cava, President Pumariega. Thank you for having us here. We're really delighted to be here for the third year in a row. And I also want to give a special thank you to Pedro Santos of Miami Dade College, who's always been of incredible help. So thank you, Pedro. It's going to be a full day, full 2 days of panels. We're going to have here the leadership stage, the innovation stage on the other side of registration. We're going to have some deep dive workshops in workshop room 1 throughout the day. So really deep dive discussions there. So I really encourage you to attend the workshops, which have really interesting content and discussions. All the program is on the app, which you can download on the Apple Store or Android Store. It's really simple. It's called CoMotion, so that's easy. And on the back of your badge, you will see a QR code to view the program, and there's also the Wi-Fi codes there. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our founder, our president, John Rossant.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back home here in Miami-Dade County, in this great city of Miami, and back home here in Miami Dade College. This is the 7th edition of CoMotion Miami. I think it's grown year by year into a really incredibly dynamic conversation between public and private about how to improve our cities, how to make them more equitable, more safe, more dynamic in the years ahead. Miami, as Tim says, we are so happy and honored to be here in Miami. It's a very big pillar of who we are at CoMotion. We now have 3, as many of you know: Los Angeles in November, Miami in the spring, and we launched CoMotion Global in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia last December, and we're working on another edition early next year. So you're welcome to all of that. CoMotion stands for improving our cities, making them safer, making them more equitable, as I said, by means of improving the multimodal mobility options in a city. Miami really has distinguished itself in recent years thanks to the efforts of its leaders and its citizens. And I think one of the things that I find so attractive about Miami is the quality of its leadership. And we have many leaders here today, but 2 who are really quite extraordinary. And the first I want to call up to the stage is our friend Madeline Pumariega, the president of this great institution, and what you have done, you and your team have done over the past few years in making Miami Dade College such a center of excellence for this region, for the nation, is really quite extraordinary. So let's give a hand to President Pumariega.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Welcome to Miami-Dade College. The mayor will be up next to welcome you to our county. But I think that in this room now for a few years really have been leaders that are innovating, leaders that are daring to dream, and leaders that are not afraid to find ways in which we can leverage technology to make those mobility points matter. Just the other day, we hosted a group for the first time, Mobility Matters, and I was sharing with that group that it matters so much. The work that CoMotion is doing is about mobility, and mobility exceeds just transportation and point-to-point connections. When we are intentional about creating those point-to-point connections, we open up the possibility of economic mobility, getting people from a job to a better job because they have those connection points. We open up that access and opportunity that we've long discussed here about mobility and commotion and equity and opportunity all are linked together. And I would just say that in the age of AI, and here with the backdrop being our Artificial Intelligence Center and the work that the college has been doing with AI, to date, we've trained 10,000 individuals on AI, 400 different businesses. And I think it's that moment where we can see what's over the horizon. And I would just say to all of us that we have to continue to think about innovation and to think about the art of possibility, and AI allows us to do that. We won't do the point-to-point connection. We won't create stronger, safer, equitable cities that CoMotion's mission and purpose is about if we don't leverage the technologies in front of us. It won't just be traditional transportation. It will require all of us to think about alternative means of transportation that won't be alternative much longer. They will be a source of how we move around a city. There's no doubt I chair the Chamber of Commerce for Miami Dade County, and I will tell you that transportation is one of the priority pillars of the Chamber of Commerce. Our members tell us every day, how do we build more infrastructure? The mayor has been a champion. The mayor of the city of Miami, Eileen Higgins, while she was on the commission, has been a champion. And I think that we're so close to that connecting north and connecting west and making all of those connection points. And I'll leave you with a conversation I had last night. Miami is a young city. Miami-Dade County is still young. And so when you're growing, and you've been growing for 125 years, not 250 years, sometimes you do make some connection mistakes. You build density out west and you build density in these other places. But I promise you that the work that we're doing, the coordination, the vision of CoMotion, everyone rowing in the right direction, we're going to be a connected city and county and a whole South Florida region much quicker than some of our other sister cities that have 100 years on us. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for being bold and visionary leaders, and thank you for investing in the connection of people. Thank you.
Thank you, President Pumariega, for those inspiring words. Thank you for your leadership here. It's really a privilege to introduce my friend, Mayor Levine Cava, who has been a true friend and supporter of what we've been trying to do at CoMotion these past few years. We are very supportive of what she has been doing here in the county, she and her team, to make mobility more accessible, to make it safer, to extend rapid bus transit, etc. It's a very impressive achievement what you've been doing in the mobility and the transit space, matched by other achievements of your administration. So thank you very much for your leadership. Come on stage, Daniela.
All right. Good morning. It's called CoMotion, and I've been to how many of these? And it only just now occurred to me that it's commotion. You know what I mean? Commotion. It's like, could we have a little commotion here in the room? I don't know if you thought of that when you named it, but yeah, we got a lot of commotion happening right here in our city and our county. We're the hot ticket, right? Everybody wants to be here. We're paradise discovered, because those of us who are here already know we live in paradise. So congratulations for those of you who are visiting to check it out. And for those of you who live here, you feel it each and every day. So I'm going to go with Madam President's vision for the future, that we will be truly connected. We are connected spiritually. We are connected because we are such an inclusive and belonging place. But connected to get around, we got some needs here, which you're helping us to solve. So thank you so very much. I'm going to vote for this woman for president. All right. Who's with me on that? All right. Madeline I mean, president, you are president. All right. So we're here in the age of AI, so it could not be more appropriate to have the conference call upon the AI revolution, which, by the way, the college claims, and legitimately so, is really a global hub in AI absorption in our community. And in fact, here in Miami-Dade County government, we're being trained by Miami-Dade College to take advantage of AI to improve our operations. You're here because you are leaders, as was mentioned. You are leaders in this field. Maybe there's a few of you who are newbies who just want to know what's going on, but I think most of you really are with the program. And we know that through the help of CoMotion, we are on the map when it comes to mobility. I was just interviewed, I think, by the CoMotion team, like, why Miami? So I had to think about that. Why Miami? I don't know, what are you, other than the weather and the dynamism and so on. And I think we really are the place that is so open to innovation. We're so open to people, we're so open to ideas, we're so open to trying things. Some of that because we're newish. And for example, I am very, very proud as mayor that during my time, we have grown substantially as a transit agency. We are now the 10th largest in the country transit system. And I'm looking around for someone who can tell me from our team, before the pandemic, we were like 14th, something. I mean, we really had a meteoric, can anyone confirm or deny what I just said here? We were 14th? Hey, pretty good. Okay. You know, I take my pride points very personally. So why? Why did we advance from 14th to 10th? During the pandemic, people came back. We were very aggressive in making sure that our transit was safe, making sure it was responsive, and we're very, very proud of that fact. And we also launched the biggest improvement in our transit system, and I see my friend Javier in the back who helped to fund it, Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, and our half penny, which along with federal and state dollars got us there. Metro Express is now saving commuters as much as 40 minutes each way in their commute from South Dade to Dadeland, and then connecting up to our Metro Rail, and it's serving 10,000 riders daily. So that's just one of the examples where we're delivering faster, more dependable service to the communities that need it most. On top of the transit piece, which I could go on, there's also the airport and the seaport. Yesterday we had the state of the ports, and we got to brag about how fast we're growing. And by the way, with transit connections, very important, but really it's about taking a more holistic approach. Like President Pumariega said, it's about connecting people to places they need to go, about economic opportunity. So mobility is not just for convenience, it's for necessity. And we are not just thinking about transportation in isolation. We're connecting transit to housing, to jobs, and community development. So we've done many things, including changing our zoning to make it possible to upzone, densify along those corridors. We reduced the number of required parking spaces to help bring down the price, and incentivized other ways that our workforce can afford to live on those transit corridors. So people don't have to worry about parking or driving when they have quick access to transit. And we're also building community hubs along those corridors. And technology, of course, which so much of what you're talking about in this setting is the technology, is accelerating that progress. We're using real-time data, AI-driven insights to transform how our riders plan, access, and pay for their trips, and getting them better tools to manage and improve the system as a whole. And this is part of a larger global conversation about how these technologies move from pilot programs to real-world scalable solutions, and we're really proud that we're part of so many of those pilots. Just look outside, lots going on. But at the end of the day, again, innovate, just like it's not only about transit, it's about community. It's not only, innovation is not only about technology. Very much it's about how we design our communities. So we're taking a very holistic approach. We're working across our departments in the county, our housing, our community services, our libraries, neighborhoods where people can live, work, and move with ease. So CoMotion matters. So many great ideas are launched here, and at the end of the day, it's the collaboration that takes place. I know for me personally, I've experienced for the first time many of the innovations that we now see every day in our transportation. So thank you so very much to bringing these ideas. Thank you to our local partners for elevating them and sustaining them. And so I look forward to what comes out of this session. Congratulations and welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Levine Cava. We are so delighted to be in Miami Dade County, and we're really honored that you've been here at every single CoMotion Miami. So thank you so much for this. And now we're going to be starting with our next panel. I see that they're not quite in the room yet, so I think they're just coming along now from the green room. So just give us 1 minute. You've been, yes, very efficient. The speeches have gone really on time, and I see our panel is just about to come out from the green room, which will be moderated by Karina Ricks, who used to work at USDOT and also at Pittsburgh DOT, and is now one of the key partners of Citify Advisors, who will be moderating our opening panel. And I see them rushing towards the main stage. Here they are. I see Reed. Yes, a good warm round of applause. They're coming through. Here they are. And I can see Karina, who will be moderating the first panel. So, if I can invite you to come on stage, and then I'll hand it over to Karina.
Great. Well, I have the great pleasure of moderating a panel on moving millions. As you know, Miami-Dade will be a host of the FIFA World Cup in just a few months, but they're not alone. I actually am coming here from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We just completed the NFL draft, and we're able to welcome over 800,000 people to the city, you know, aside from some beer-driven enthusiasm, which is very on brand for my city. You know, it really came off largely without a hitch. So that was a great thing. Even the weather cooperated. So we have a stellar panel. We're going to give them a lot of time to speak to this topic. Let's start with Dale in the middle there. Dale is principal with Mobility Insight. He's a visionary transportation engineer, really focused on sustainable mobility for healthy, safe communities. Importantly, Dale led transportation for the Vancouver Olympics and has helped for a number of other global major events across North America. Aileen Bucal, oops, I'm mispronouncing last name, is Executive Director of Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization. The Miami-Dade TPO is the largest metropolitan region in the state of Florida. It's a very complex region. She's responsible for a number of different systems. She's nationally recognized as being a leader in innovative and collaborative solutions for these complex multidisciplinary issues. She also serves as first vice chair of the National Association of Regional Councils, or NARC, so really a national leader as well. Jose Clavel is Vice President of Transportation for the U.S. South for EXP. He's a multimodal engineer who's been instrumental in advancing Miami-Dade County's Strategic Miami Area Transit, or the SMART program. This is a massive investment program to bring high-quality transit throughout the metro region, and has been involved in a number of other major transportation projects throughout Florida. Ray Martinez, next to me, is the Chief Operating Officer for the 2026 FIFA World Cup Games, Miami Host Committee. He's also the former president and executive director of the 2020 Miami Super Bowl Host Committee. Ray has a history of distinguished service in public safety, law enforcement, and with the U.S. Marines. And he's applied this experience to advise public policy with a focus on law enforcement and major event security. And finally, Reed Alvaro, at the end there, is vice president at WSP, leading major events development and infrastructure advisory out of Los Angeles. He specializes in helping agencies prepare for complex global events, such as the FIFA World Cup, the Olympic Games. He's currently helping to support Philadelphia's SEPTA, Sound Transit in Seattle, Los Angeles Metro, and the Mid-America Regional Council, or MARC, in Kansas City ahead of the 2026 World Cup Games. So really we have an amazing panel of experts who, this is deep technical knowledge, but I want to begin with deep local knowledge. As I mentioned, Pittsburgh, we have our own kind of unique character. So Aileen, what do we have to consider here in Miami ahead of this major event? And what is sort of the zest that Miami brings that you're going to have to deal with?
Well, thank you. I don't know if this is on. Can you hear me? Yes, excellent. Well, thank you for that. First, I'd like to recognize our amazing mayor, Madam Mayor Daniela Levine Cava. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you. And she's also a former board member on the Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization. So, thank you for your leadership and your partnership. And so, really, Miami, welcome. If you're not from here, welcome to Miami. What can I say? We have the sun and we have the beaches. What else, right? No, but we have major events. And thank you to the leadership of our mayor and my governing board. It's not about how we're preparing suddenly for major events. It's about what we're doing day in and day out, every day in our network and in our infrastructure. So the things that we think about are how do we manage major events. We did a study in partnership with the mayor's team on how to increase the last mile connectivity on major events. We had a lot of great recommendations there that I'm looking forward to discussing about really increasing multimodalism, micromobility, partnerships, strengthening partnerships. And this is something that, because of our leadership, our elected officials and their vision, is something that we're really good at doing here. Thank you.
And Jose, can you speak to, we all know and love Miami for being just a very passionate place, may have some particular passion for soccer. We'll see. How are you thinking about this? And really, what is Miami? You had the Copa America a few years ago, learned a lot from that experience. Tell us about the unique Miami character here.
I have to say that I did learn a lot from that experience because all my friends are so passionate about soccer. I give you an example, which is kind of interesting. I went to Spain just to see Messi, Ronaldo, and Neymar in one of the games. And the passion that we have for soccer is amazing. So now that we're planning for the infrastructure, and even though we have a long-term plan and consistency for planning, when we think about these events, we have to shift into the short-term, what can we do today to make it better? Connectivity, maintenance, all the things, transit, how do we connect the fans to the event? But the hardest part, I think, looking at communications and the passion that people have for soccer is how do we manage that, right? Because that passion can maybe change the outcome. So we gotta be prepared for that. And certainly we've learned a lot from the Copa America a few years ago.
Yeah. Maybe Ray, I'll turn to you with this. I know you just interrupted a call as you were planning for these events and getting ready, but you're responsible in part for making sure that this is a safe and secure event, and safety and security is paramount, as we know, in these major events. But again, I want to keep coming back to, how do you balance safety and security with really having an enjoyable, you need that to be almost invisible, but not entirely invisible, because you want people to feel it, right? How do you balance that safety and security with the enjoyment and the activity and just the love of the game and the love of the event?
Well, Am I on? Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, you said it, there's a balance, right? And safety and security has to be paramount, because if you're having an event and you can't make sure that the people attending and, working at the event are going to be safe and secure, nothing else matters, right? We want to make sure that the safety and security is, after it's all over, that nobody's talking about it because nothing happened, right? So that's the plan, that's the goal, but there is a balance, right? So, we've been working very closely with our public safety agencies, with Miami-Dade County, and, just kind of coordinating. As a host committee, we're responsible for a lot, but we're really in charge of nothing, right? So I don't have the authority to tell the sheriff of Miami-Dade County what to do, right? Or to tell the FBI what to do. But, we're kind of like the glue that brings everybody together, and make sure that we're addressing all of these things from all these different silos, and that we're coming together with a transportation plan that Miami-Dade County is leading for us. And, the other part is communication, right? Is making sure that that message gets out to the fans, to the people that are coming to these matches, but also to the people that live here year round, right? Because they're going to be affected as well, whether they're going to the match or not. We're fortunate enough to have 7 matches here. We're planning a 23-day fan festival in downtown Miami. So, what we're trying to do is make sure that the people that have tickets go to the stadium and are able to get in and safely partake and have a great time. But those that don't have tickets, come down to the Fan Fest, because that's where you're going to be able to watch the games, be with your friends and compadres, and cheer on your country, cheer on your team. So those are the messagings that will be coming out as we lead up to the games.
Yeah, and I just want everyone to appreciate the scale of these if you're not familiar with it. So the World Cup games are the equivalent of holding between 5 and 7 Super Bowls over the course of a month. So it's sort of a continuous rolling festival in which there are 100,000 ticketed fans, give or take.
Actually, about 65. The stadium holds about 65, 66,000 people. So it's not a huge stadium, when in comparison to some of the stadiums around the world. But there's going to be 65 passionate fans there, 65,000.
65 ticketed fans and 2 to 3 times more unticketed people who are just enthusiastic about their teams being here. So it's a massive, massive event that will last, give or take, a month for each one of these host cities. So maybe I want to pop over to Reed, because you're working with 4 of these different cities. So
yeah, I haven't been home in a while. I miss it. LA is a great place, but living between Philadelphia, Kansas City, Seattle, and popping into fun places like Miami has been great. I think, I really love the way, Eileen, you mentioned just that it's not about just mega events, right? It's about that coordination, it's about the communications, about the security overlay. And I really think of major events as just a litmus test. It's a litmus test for how your city functions on a daily basis and how that kind of ecosystem and the things we talk about at CoMotion are being applied. And Philadelphia is a really exciting example of that. Not only is it hosting the event you just mentioned, coming off the heels of wanting to impress from its sister city of Pittsburgh over there. I think 800,000 people turned out, by the way. So raise the bar for what we have in the weeks ahead. But hosting World Cup, hosting America's 250th, MLB All-Star Game 3 days later, and the PGA Championship. And what I think has been a really, really interesting look in Philadelphia is how are we, testing these systems accurately? I could speak about a million things, but one I think that's most interesting is remembering that we haven't had a global event of this scale in about 24 years, right? Since 2002, when the Olympics were last in Salt Lake City. So what's different? This whole digital overlay. And making sure that our customer experience is something in an age where we're not building massive new stadiums every time these tournaments come to town. How are we improving some of the little systems that take away the friction so that you can enjoy and have that kind of invisible fun experience and not worry about all 5 of us in the background kind of with our hair on fire. And that's through things like enhanced ambassador programs, making sure that your digital and physical signage are aligned. Let me tell you, sometimes harder than imagined. And just kind of thinking about that journey from A to Z. So a lot more to say there, but I'll pause.
yeah, Dale, I'm going to come back to you in just a second, but something you said makes me want to follow up. So you mentioned SEPTA, and Aileen, I think that this is for you too. These cities are not getting a windfall of funding to pull these games off. These cities are by and large needing to come up with the funding, come up with the infrastructure improvements, come up with the service improvements on their own. SEPTA is facing a major funding crisis right now. Can you, you know, I'm sure, you know, Seattle likewise, others, Los Angeles. Can you talk a little bit about how you're bringing together, and maybe also for this region, how you're bringing together the funding constraints with the need to deliver really exceptional games and exceptional mobility for these, you know, million-plus visitors per game?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to start that conversation by saying, you know, we do this on a daily basis as leaders in mobility. Just on Saturday, I got here early to check out the new Inter Miami FC stadium. Not as good as LAFC's, but very, very good. Okay, yeah, I got it. Sports bring out a lot of emotion. But it was very, very cool to see how much it was mobilizing the transit network here. You know, I landed at Fort Lauderdale, I came down, and people were already on the commuter rail coming down. Leaving, it was packed with people on the metro system, and a huge testament to the investment you guys have made here. So it's how are we taking those things and then applying it on a larger scale? And there have been a lot of tough conversations about priorities. You know, Ray, I'm sure you've had to be sitting with them as well, and asking ourselves what's achievable. So that's why I go to, with SEPTA, we had the opportunity to really reimagine their customer experience program. And how we landed on that investment, to your point, is at WSP, we start every major event conversation with a comprehensive needs assessment to say, not is, you know, no offense, what does FIFA need? It's what does SEPTA need, and what does Sound Transit need, and what does LA Metro need? Now, how do we overlay that with your needs, and the events needs, and the customer needs? And if we can align the long-term goals with the short-term needs, I think we get some really exciting outcomes in any city.
So picking up where you left off, really it's not the size that matters, but it's the location. In this case, not just proximity to the beach right after the game, but also the fact that you're right next to an international airport. But we're not competitors of each other, we're actually collaborators. And what I want to say about the funding challenge is, number one, we have to, and we find ourselves stepping up in ways that we haven't done before in terms of strengthening interagency collaboration with our partners. In my TPO governing board meeting last week, we had a major transit provider come and report the significant increase in ridership just from some of the events that we're doing right now, and how that's so critical to that big puzzle of congestion and how we're managing that for major events. But as far as funding, Miami-Dade TPO conducted a study last year about the, you know, how do we increase the connectivity in major events, and how do we manage all of our network. And one key recommendation we had, which we passed on to all of our major events organizers, are to include the price of the ticket of transit build it into the price of the ticket to the event, in order to open up an opportunity for the consumer to understand that there are alternate ways, alternate mobility. Now in Miami-Dade County, we have a metro system, 22 miles of elevated heavy rail for our 3 million population, and quite more for, and beyond that for our visitors. It's not an expansive system, but what we do have, we can really expand and really launch very sophisticated first last mile operations at the hubs closest to these events. Now, our idea picked up a lot of traction, had a huge support here in our region. Not all the cities agreed, and without concurrence across all cities, we were not able to implement this for FIFA in advance. However, we do see examples of this around the nation having a significant shift, and we want to continue to work with our partners to start making that part of our just everyday common mega event cost of the ticket. So that's one way that we can at least help on the transportation side in terms of not getting additional funds. We are overextending our service, and there's a lot going on, and plus we can't handle everyone in a single occupant vehicle, not even an Uber, which in my mind is the same thing. So we need to make sure we're pushing these alternative modes and try to include the costs at the same time.
And if I could just add on to that really quick, I think LA Metro has done a fantastic job of leaning into collective asks through their program SetGo, which stands for Special Event Transportation Guidance Opportunity. The CEO at LA Metro has kind of launched a forum of sitting down with leaders from other transit agencies around the country and asking, okay, how can we make, one ask collectively among the cities to make sure that, it isn't a divided front, because at the end of the day, a lot of these every city is unique, but they're also facing a lot of similar challenges.
Great. And so Dale, I want to come to you. You've been doing this for 20 years or so with a number of different very large-scale events, the Olympics, for example. What are some of the challenges that you've seen in a number of these events, some of the things that maybe were a little bit unexpected, or things that maybe get less attention because you've seen these in different places?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Just welcome back to Miami. My first mega event was coming here for the 2007 Super Bowl. And just the sport might be the memory, or it could be having seen Prince play at halftime in the pouring rain, Purple Rain. So just great memories started there. And so thinking about Super Bowl, Olympics, Pan Am Games, which has a good application for LA 28 in terms of like the spreading out of venues, and then also like my colleagues here supporting Vancouver and Toronto for getting ready for FIFA. So I'd say, Karina, the first part is opening ceremony, right? Each of these mega events, and this is different than the rest of our projects, right? And we talk about funding challenges, you've got scope, but your time is fixed. So that's the unique thing about mega events, but I would say it's also a rallying cry. So it's the problem, but it also is the solution. When you work in the collaboration, I'm sure, Ray, you're doing a lot of this, it's like, this is the time where we come together. The world will be watching us on such and such a day, and so that's kind of that. Second part is you need to redefine business as usual. And so whether you're part of the team, like the safety security, if you're at the venue level and you're just trying to support the local businesses that still need access, or the residents who have to go through a VAP, if you don't know what that is, we'll talk later. But then it's also just that, you're supporting your economy, you've got your regular goods movement, so you have to work within the industries that you have. I'll still remember at Olympics, we did all the kind of interest stakeholder kind of meetings and met with the midwives, and they're like, Dale, babies are still going to be born, and we got to move around the city. Absolutely, right? So you need to redefine business as usual at all the different levels that you have. And then kind of just the last one is, again, it's always about collaboration, right? In the end, we only manage whatever our agency's authority or consultant, one integrated mobility system. But you really need to come to the table and actually roll up your sleeves and really partner through the mega events, because you just don't have time to kind of have turf wars, any of the traditional, or like the public sector, great pitch breakfast. Just reckoning again, public agencies tend to be slow, right? But for mega events, you're bringing them along to be able to respond in faster ways. And then to kind of finish that thought that I think we might have a little bit more conversation on, is because you're ultimately supporting them in what you want as a great experience, let's say, for example, in Miami, that becomes a bit of a legacy and another launching pad towards your long-term sustainable mobility goals.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I do want to kind of, maybe have anyone on the panel answer something again that is unique about the World Cup games, maybe also the Olympics to some extent, is the duration of them, right? As I mentioned, Pittsburgh, we moved 800,000 people, but it was 3 days, right? They canceled school, like pandemic taught us to do virtual learning. Like you can do that for 3 days, right? But you're talking about babies need to be born, like the life needs to continue for a month. So what are the ways that you're going to keep the rest of the economy, especially the essential workers, right? Folks who don't really have the option just to take time off or not work. How are we going to move these individuals?
Well, yeah, I'll just start by saying, having the pleasure to work across multiple markets, one of the things we're running into is a lot of cities that are like, yeah, we know events, and while that is true for 90%, I think the 10 you just mentioned, is thinking about kind of your workforce retention, right? Whether it's operators or admin employees at agencies that are serving as ambassadors, thinking about this running into a second week of really long days when we're talking about Philadelphia and that MLB All-Star game coming after and still needing that support. We really had to ask ourselves, what are our employee incentives to do this? What are our communication strategies to make sure that we're having folks take healthy breaks before or after, would love after the tournament so we can fit in this trainings that we need to do. But yeah, just having a holistic understanding of how people kind of live their daily lives among all of this. And then on the movement, I think it's really important to remember that not everyone's going to these games. And so if we need to have closures to certain rail lines that are passing stadiums, are we thinking about what's on the other side of that? And really kind of respectfully, engaging in dialogue with security experts and acknowledging the fact that security is paramount. If an event is not safe, it is not going to happen. But how are we balancing that with the need to not have an unnecessary bus bridge, for example, for a line that's moving by a stadium, particularly if it's going to a hospital after? So just thinking, holistically about the needs well after the game finishes.
And maybe just, if I can maybe compare Olympics to FIFA, because for Olympics, we had a 6-week massive communication in our world, transportation demand management campaign, let's do things differently. And in that sense, you have a large momentum, and that 17 days, again, back to opening ceremony, it starts. FIFA, I mean, we really need to lean on our communications experts, because it's these pulse checks that we're gonna have for again, in Vancouver, we have 7 matches, and one's gonna be on a weekday, and then one's gonna be on a weekend. So if we tell the public, and back to your point, Ray, like the fan zones and all like that, those are gonna be more continuous. But for the actual, again, you say large Super Bowl, like the event itself, all the spectators and all those are enjoying it, if we oversaturate them with communications on those unique days, they're not going to hear you by match 3 and 4. So it's a bit of a, I'm an engineer, plan engineer as a better way of describing, but we need to lean on our communication experts to really help us, at least in the difference between an Olympics and a FIFA.
And Karina, if I can add, with a focus of workforce, originally what you were saying, especially our essential workers, and the key is dynamic messaging. We already have information. We know when closures, Formula One, we know what turnpike stations or off-ramps are being closed. We are messaging ahead of time. We are surveying our workforce to see who's impacted. We know the origin destination. We know who's using that, and trying to get ahead and integrating technology as possible solutions. When you have essential workers and they're required to be in person and they cannot be hybrid, then you have to make sure that you're messaging ahead of time alternate ways of getting there. And a key takeaway for us is not just managing in the moment, but hopefully capturing some of these new alternative ways of coming in that can live beyond these events. And just like I agree, it's partnership, it's communication, and it's integrating whatever on all technologies, on all forums, not just the cell phones, not just our digital, billboards, but dynamic, real-time messaging.
Yeah, I just want to catch what she was saying, which I think is really important, which is that these events can also be an opportunity for durable behavioral change, right? People who've never taken, the Metro Mover before, or who've never taken Metro Rail, like suddenly, like they're going to try it because, and again, speaking from our experience, the new riders on our bus system was like 70% new riders. And if you can do it during that event, maybe you can do it, when Beyonce comes to town or, something else happens, right? Like you're starting to teach durable behaviors, you're starting to get those communication methods out, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, you brought up Formula One, and I think Las Vegas does something at RTC, does something really responsible, which is, I keep on going back to this honest conversation about what you can achieve. And they know, particularly with the route in Las Vegas being hot track, cool track through the city, they're doing really crazy things with that route. They have to be communicating months ahead to those essential workers, those folks who need to get to the casinos. So they're actually putting in planned detours baked into their transit guides, into their rider guides that are sitting on buses. And to your point, not assuming that the kind of digital rollout of that the day of is going to reach everyone. It needs to be kind of in an analog form as well, particularly when we talk about some of the communities that are going to be most affected, those daily bus riders. So just wanted to add an anecdote over there.
Yeah. And Jose, I thought maybe you wanted to jump in?
I just want to say that Miami Dade is a great place in which the agencies have truly partnered together, and also with the consultants and the workforce. And what we have here is we have so much talent from all places in Miami. We have a lot of people with experience, especially for this type of events, and I think that's going to help us a lot. One of the things that is so interesting about Miami, for those of you that are not from here, if you look around, everything is growing, everything is in construction. So we're also taking that into consideration when we're doing all this coordination, because you have, the maintenance of traffic, you have to look at how the shuttles move. If there's a major issue with one of the capital improvement programs, we're coordinating that too. But Miami is so prepared that I'm confident that this is going to be a great event, because I'm seeing it behind the scenes with the scopes and the things that the different agencies are doing, the TPO, of course, Miami-Dade County, preparing for this. And as a consultant, I can tell you that we have been working for a long time, making sure that connectivity is a plus, safety, and certainly communication.
Yeah.
Karina, just wondering if I can engage the audience in the word durable that you mentioned, because again, with a room of innovators and data and AI, when we did Olympics, we knew that the durable had to be at least beyond the storytelling for like what you're saying, Eileen, to say, hey, we did something different and we can celebrate that. Objective data is really important. So if you aren't art engaged, you know there's a funding challenge amongst the host cities, so don't ask to get paid. But if you have an opportunity to quantify that durable legacy, position yourself that way, find ways to help the public agencies to be able to tell the story back to the businesses, back to residents to say it was a success. We didn't have that in Vancouver 2010. We went to UBC, and we went to researchers, and we had students, and it was really cheap labor and an opportunity. Things have advanced. So let's use technology and use your innovation and things to help these agencies have a tangible, durable legacy that they can talk about after.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I'll just point out, as again, Pittsburgh was just wrapping this up, we asked ourselves, is there anything that we can test as long as we're setting up these different kinds of mobility systems? Is there something that we can see, if we do congestion pricing, which is essentially what we did during these games, how do people react to that? If we set up, points of intercept, how do those function? And so we were able to actually test and measure, to Dale's point on that. So I do want to kind of pivot a little bit. So as we all know, you set up these plans, you set up your systems, and everyone follows every rule that you establish, right? Especially pedestrians and ride-hail drivers, right? Notorious for really, adhering to those rules. So what do you think, Ray? What are the rogue actors, and how are you anticipating, that sort of organic movement during the games, and how you're going to respond to that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely going to be a challenge. That's a challenge we've all experienced at, events, mega events, or just regular rideshare, right, in general. The stadium it's going to be a unique challenge because unlike some cities, we don't have a rail service that takes you to the stadium. So the rail service only goes so far, and then you're going to have to get on a shuttle or a transport bus to come into the stadium. And that's what we're emphasizing on. The Dolphins and Hard Rock Stadium have been working on this for years because obviously they're trying to reduce the single vehicles and the ride shares because it just does clog the roadways and really push out the shuttle service, and they've been sponsoring, if you will, different ride shares, just for regular Dolphin games or regular events. You know, we and through the Miami-Dade County Transportation Department have really built this out because that's what we want to focus on, right? And so then it comes into the messaging, it gets into the communication with the ride share, and we've been in constant dialogue with them. The challenge is, you know, their model is the drivers are independent, you know, and they can only control so much of what they do. So, you know, we're not only trying to reach the drivers and the companies, but we're also going to be trying to reach the riders, right? So they understand where they should be going. If they take a ride share, where do they need to go to be dropped off, you know, before they get into that ride share, you know, and so they're not taken somewhere they shouldn't be and they get dropped off and now all of a sudden they're, you know, can't get into the stadium even though they may have a ticket because there's no access where they got dropped off. Right. So, you know, it's definitely a challenge. You know, we're looking at that. Look, the good things for us here in South Florida and Miami, the event is in June and July, which are slower times, if you will. You know, a lot of the people, hot. Very hot. That's another challenge.
We say tropical.
But you know, a lot of people do go away for the summer, and so I mean, we've all experienced school is out. The roads are a little easier to navigate here. You know, we do have some major construction projects going on that are not going to be completed before the World Cup games. So, you know, all of these different challenges and needs, you know, coexist, and, you know, managing those is the collaboration, the communication, and working together. So these are all things that are being taken under consideration. And we joke, because I was on a Teams call walking into this, and it was on transportation, right, with the stadium, with the Miami-Dade County, you know, with the host committee, and with public safety. So, you know, these are ongoing meetings and ongoing discussions and just trying to solve those little problems. So at the end of the day, the fan experience is positive, because that's what we want to be remembered as.
Right, right. And so Dale, you know, again, you've done this more than a couple of times. The constant is the inconsistency in the way that, in particular, pedestrians will just, they'll do what they're going to do. But also now ride hail and other kinds of things. How do you build in agility? How do you build in sort of real-time response? Like, how do you get that nimbleness that you'll need to respond? Because suddenly, you know, there's a cloudburst and it's raining and you know, something else is happening. So what are your tips for these organizers to really respond in real time?
Thanks. I mean, first of all, it was way easier in 2010 when things like ride share and shared micromobility, like getting bike valet was kind of the era of that. But so again, doing that, one I would say is, like, directly to those is, I mean, you look at New York now, DOT, if you don't yet have a curbside management strategy, they've got a whole curbside Department of Transportation. So tie it to your goals about curbside management is my specific one on ride share and shared micromobility. But to answer your question again with just the different behaviors, one is like your operation centers and how you communicate. Are you setting up a dedicated transportation operation center, and is that where you're getting intelligence? Do you have a kind of an overall operation center for the games and event itself? And again, that cross partnership that, again, Eileen also emphasized, like the way that you need to share in real time. Like, so we at the City of Vancouver, when I was there, you know, we need to work with TransLink, the transit provider, and managing that stations. And then last but not least is don't miss out still, I'll call it the analog versions of all the digital things. One of the most successful things that we handled, that the chaos and the rogueness from the last mile perspective is, and I didn't believe it until I saw it, but, you know, get the lifeguard chairs off the beach, put some nice wayfinding, and a guy or a gal, like, with a loudspeaker, hey, walk this way, come to the venue. Like it's just like simple things. People just need to kind of feel like, back to your point, Reed, about customer experience, et cetera. So don't forget some of those, like, simple, easy things. And again, both at the City of Vancouver and TransLink, we redeployed everybody that we possibly could, because it's a celebratory and it's experience perspective. So from how do you actually get the people to sort of support that? That's always possible.
Yeah, so two things I want to mention. One, those lifeguard chairs. Everyone should have lifeguard chairs at events. They are the best kept secret. I was just in Milan for the Winter Olympics, and it's obvious, but worth reinstating that just, like, kind of getting above the crowd and having kind of the proper, like, eyes on those first last mile solutions are critical. Something I saw in there and in Paris was how much, and this ties into what you just mentioned about heat. Like, we forget how much, one, we are taking away what Americans value most in society, which are the 60,000 parking spots around these stadiums, and turning them for a safe and secure experience and to move that security perimeter out into fan zones and into activated spaces that were not built for these 100+ degree days with kind of that heat island effect. And what impact that's making on the pedestrian to maybe not have full alertness. And so what are we doing to reinforce drinking water from the beginning? How are we working that into our engagement plans? LA Metro has done great work around building a heat sustainability guide and really kind of mapping that first last mile solution with temporary infrastructure for additional seating, for areas to kind of remove or put a rug, astroturf, whatever it is, between you and that kind of hot asphalt. But in stations and in tricky corridors, one of the things that I've liked so much and something I always go back to is the closing ceremony of the Paris Games in 2024, where they took the ambassadors and a lot of those stations are not elevated and nice kind of larger concourses like we have in some of our modern systems in America, but they're really, really narrow. So what they did was they took the ambassadors and printed out signs that said, thank you, goodbye, adios, a million languages, and lined them against the walls. And so when you were walking into the opening ceremony, it was this brilliant crowd control technique because everyone just felt like they were at Disneyland. And just getting people to feel like they're already at the game before they're at the game and getting people in a good mood, whether that's by reducing heat or just making people happy, making it feel like a festive celebration, you start to slow people down and you really start to take control back of some of those rogue actors. You're not going to get everyone, but you're starting to control the flow.
I just want to add what Reed just said really brings into focus something that my agency does. Again, we're not the event planner, we are not an operator, we are the Miami Dade Transportation Planning Organization. We're thinking of 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead, but it's not just about how do we make our infrastructure, how do we harden our infrastructure, but how do we make it intuitive? And I think that that is a great example where you're lining the walls with all the diplomats and their messages, and suddenly it becomes a space, that otherwise would just be for pedestrians on a regular day, but it's now intuitive to your consumer. Oh, this is where I need to go. But how do we make it intuitive for the long term? It's not just for our one-day event. And now what we're looking at is the pedestrian, bicycle, micromobility level, first, last mile connectivity. If you look at our sidewalk system, quite frankly, nationwide, is it really intuitive? I mean, do we really have an appropriate pedestrian infrastructure in this country? Is it intuitive for a pedestrian to want to walk on a 4-foot wide sidewalk next to a 6-lane mega arterial roadway? And who would have thought that we would have had to have naturally built a sidewalk next to a 6-lane arterial highway simply because cars are there, that people would be walking there on a 4-foot sidewalk? Maybe what we have is a nationwide bicycle infrastructure sidewalk, and what we don't have is a pedestrian network. How do people really move? What you do is have to look down and see that gravel road on how people are really getting around. Have we built that? And we learn a lot from these events, and we want to make sure that we're not just building the right infrastructure, but that it's intuitive. So if someone's not looking at their phone, non-digital messaging, how am I getting there? It's not just wayfinding messages. We have all the languages in the world represented here, but I'm in a space, where do I go next? How do we build that layer of intuitiveness?
Yeah, that is a great point. And I just want to add to that, one thing that I know LA Metro is really focused on, because they're hosting the Olympics and the Paralympics. And so one of the things that LA is really focused on, and I hope all of the other cities are as well, is universal access. So it's not just how do able-bodied pedestrians get around, but how do you ensure that everyone of every ability is able to get there as you're setting up temporary flows as well as the permanent condition. So it's really laudable that this is an attention to them. So I want to open it up for questions from you all, but I want to ask the panel one more thing as we get into that. this is CoMotion. It's an amazing event that brings together some of the best innovators from the private sector, some public sector agencies that have challenges that they're encountering. So if you were to throw a challenge to this group and say, what I really need is this kind of, and I respect the point about analog, so it doesn't just have to be a digital solution, but this is the solution that I'm looking for to really help with these games that I really haven't encountered yet. What would you say, Ray?
Well, for me, I need help in the last mile, of those solutions to make sure that, once they get to the stadium, now walking towards the stadium or, to the transportation hub, how, just having the information, having the resources there for hydration, because we talked about being June and July, it's going to be very hot. Heat, heat has been a front and center topic, on all of this. So, that's what I don't want to say struggling with, but really still challenged with, trying to find the right solution and partner really to help us map that out.
That's great. How about you, Jose? What would you challenge them to develop?
I think for me as a consultant, it's two things. One, because I use transit every day, the heat. Especially in this weather, I usually have a mini fan in my bag. That's why my bag is so big. I have water to hydrate, and that seems very simple, but it's really needed because of the humidity. Right away you feel it, and that can cause a lot of problems. I think the second one, as a engineer planner, is sometimes we try to find solutions, and the first thing I did as I was preparing for this, all the things that we're doing right now for the county TPO, wayfinding, looking at the stations, evaluation, accessibility, all these things. But sometimes what Eileen said is the most important. It's not about all those things. It's about the psychology and the behavior. How can we build infrastructure, even if it's short term, that actually makes sense for an average user? And that takes behavior and communication and really trying these things out before these events happen, right? And I think the TPO does a great job looking ahead and helping us to see the path.
Yeah, and I would again add to yours, because we talked earlier about this sort of independent nation of Miami that sort of exists here, is that
the capital of Latin America.
that when we talk about communication, it is not in a single language. It's multiple languages.
And even within Spanish, right? Because we have different cultures and we communicate in a different way, and we need to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, so I think maybe I already gave you my best pitch is to really try to get involved in that durable legacy. And so if you have ways to kind of partner with the public agencies and the host committees to really quantify it'll be amazing. The plan's going to work. Smart people like on this panel have been involved in it. They're ready. And then being able to help them then there'll be stories, but if you can do that. The other would be, again, back to that communications, and I'll give you a Vancouver example. We have a beautiful commuter rail. It runs Monday to Friday. Thank goodness TransLink's going to run it on Saturday. I'm not hearing anybody talk about it. So again, how do you, through your messages and mediums, amplify the right messages so that, again, where there is the provision of last mile and the good things that are happening, people use it and they don't default to the single occupancy or the Uber. And then the last is, if you can get involved, again, I now run my own company, again, coming though from public sector, just get involved. Because again, the headlines that we're gonna have across from Mexico to Canada to US about being an amazing host for FIFA is what matters to all of us. And then if you can say, and I had a part in that, then you have an opportunity to kind of move forward. So whatever that looks like, I'd say, get involved, be a part of the solution. It's all for us to gain, and doing a great job hosting the world's largest sporting event coming soon.
Right. Eileen, if you could conjure any new innovation to help you, what would you ask for?
Again, coming from the perspective of the Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization, what I would want to capitalize in front of this amazing group is that you're right now in Miami, you're in the #1 state in the nation with the highest fatalities and injuries for bicyclists and pedestrians. That's where you're at. And so my struggle is constant. We can't get off this list. And I want to let you in on a secret. I cannot tell you how many pedestrians I have on any given day in my entire network. I have no way to know this. There is no ability to count pedestrians unless I'm actually laying out hardware at every single intersection and around every school and park. I have data, I have Bluetooth data on cars that I get delivered quite a bit that we have, but my ability to have a conversation about how we're going to solve a problem when I don't even know how many pedestrians we have on any given day in any area, the way that we're operating is based on historical data. So my challenge and what I would love to engage in with innovators and technology, because I know the technology is out there, we just haven't connected the dots. It's being used somewhere out there. We want to be able to have a proactive database. I don't want to be, working on an intersection design because it's a high fatality and crash location. Yes, I want to make sure that never happens again, but I want to know where the near miss is happening. I want to be in that intersection before there's another fatality and injury, and I have no way to be informed. So I want to progress from a historical to a progressive database where I can be going and lobbying for the funds and doing what we need to do from design, making it intuitive and improving and getting off the list. So if you can help us get off the list, I want to speak with you. So thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so two things which you've kind of heard before. One is there is going to be a lot of challenges to pedestrians in the summer ahead, and heat is going to be the primary one. And this is a very, very smart room of individuals coming from a lot of different places. If you have an emphasis, I know it's hard for this crowd, low-tech solutions for temporary infrastructure. So one of the things that we're dealing with in a lot of cities, maybe not Miami because of the distance to the stadium, but there are going to be times where queues for light rail systems are going to be an hour and 40 minutes, and the truth is your destination is a 40-minute walk away. So there starts to become a bit of an analysis of like, well, should we just actually be encouraging people to walk through the city, go to the businesses, enjoy the city, and get them moving? That's great as long as you're working holistically with your city partners, with the local organizing committee, to make sure that there are designated safe routes, that there's places to pause. And so those temporary benches, those temporary shade structures, but emphasis on low tech because we forget that a lot of the workforce for these tournaments are volunteer-based. So it needs to be so simple in the solutions. The last thing I'll say is this is going to happen in a flash, right? And we've all been working for months, some years to make it all happen. And if you have a solution to help capture that data while it's coming, I know we've been talking a lot about analog, but making it super, super easy for transit agencies, MPOs, local organizing committees to capture all the valuable data that's going to happen. And hopefully, collectively, I think the last thing I don't want to speak for the transit agencies, but is like a million solutions coming at them weeks before a very stressful time. But how can we be helping offer some collective solutions so that's not a wasted opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, again, I want to emphasize sort of that last point that you made, that these major events will talk a lot about the fan experience, right? Like really, the owners of these teams, the owners of these stadiums, they're really leaning in on the fan experience. And honestly, that's something that every transportation professional should be leaning in on is, we know that people will walk a lot farther if it's an enjoyable, pleasant, logical, easy to navigate kind of experience. And so ways to really animate that space, I think that's a great in the temporary function. So I want to turn it over to you. Thoughts? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I need a mic or...
He's coming for you, but you can go ahead.
Hi, Tom Abraham. I'm with the United States Paralympic blind soccer team. I'm the sports ambassador for the U.S. blind soccer team. We're launching for the 2028 Olympics, and I appreciate the fact that you mentioned about people with disabilities because they're the ones that are really left out and forgotten. But a simple question to you is, and maybe you guys are already doing this, but Uber and Lyft and all these organizations, they pretty much know the patterns of what's going on. And I was just wondering if you guys are working with them in reference to giving them the areas that you need to block off to help kind of coordinate, the traffic patterns that you'd like to see established. And if that can be, built into their models, they could pretty much be sending messages out way ahead of time to their customers, basically saying, from this date to this date, you'll be, these are the situations that'll be arising. So we're going to be selecting certain patterns for you to get to point A and B and C. That might be very helpful for you to analyze and look at, is to work with those guys.
Right, so designated ride-hail spots and really coordinating with those ride-hail. Reed or Jose, you want to answer that?
I'll say, oh, sorry, Jose, you go. I'll just say one other issue that comes up with that, like, yes, it is really important to work. These are independent drivers, so there's only so much control you can do. I think what's really important is being very clear and communicative about your designated drop-off zones so that you're getting ahead and not having it compete with, you know, temporary bus drops. I think that's the hard part, is that temporary overlay and making sure that's across all systems. I think working with a local organizing committee to make sure that that message is getting out is really critical. But one thing I want to add on the rideshare front is, and this has been a big problem for Super Bowls in the past, where drivers are coming in from a much, much larger radius because of the opportunity to, you know, make some money off of these events. You have drivers coming in from 750 miles away.
I plug in your areas that you're concerned about. Get with Uber directly, the corporate guys, and say, for your drivers that are coming in from all over the place, this is the areas that they have to be, you know, you map out how they get to point A, B, and C to help you guys coordinate the traffic patterns.
I think that's a great idea, and one of the things that we do as part of our scope, because we've been working on this for years, is the traffic management. Not only looking at what we can do with Uber. I don't know if you guys have noticed sometimes when you are using Waze, how it tells you, hey, by the way, this segment has a safety issue, right? Or there's more crashes here. I think that's a great idea, and that's something that we do. I think that I'm glad that you're saying that, because it's not only the interagency coordination what works, but it's bringing partners, right, in the private sector that understand, that have the right data, and that can help us do a much better job. But it is in our scope.
Yeah, and I just want to call out too, you know, one of the considerations, we can talk later and get more questions, but one of the considerations is not just when the ride-hail vehicles are on call, so those peak periods right before the game, right after the game, but where are those vehicles going when they're not? Because as you mentioned, you know, they're coming down from Palm Beach County and wherever else to get this service. And so really having, you know, some places for them to tuck in and not just be incommoding traffic elsewhere, you know, in the city as this is happening.
Maybe I just want to, the heart of the question though started with accessibility, and again, especially at least for LA, it's Olympic and Paralympic Games, and that's what we had in Vancouver. So again, back to curbside, you can prioritize accessible loading zones, whether that be for, you know, rideshare or for us in Canada. We have regulations that taxis a certain amount need to be accessible. So by reprioritizing the curb first and foremost for those with accessibility needs, and then showing rideshare, hey, you're either further down the block or you're on the next block. So again, I think it does work with the city agencies to try and really promote that accessibility is important and manage it that way.
Just want to add one more thing, is that one of the things that also we're doing in Miami-Dade County is to look at zoning, right? Having predetermined zones for pickup and drop-offs, and that's going to help with the connectivity, accessibility, and I think somebody else mentioned ADA compliance. That's very important too. So that's something that we have been looking at for I would say more than a year before this event.
We can maybe get a couple more questions. Go ahead.
Sure, Dave Hutchinson, SRF Consulting, and formerly with the Sarasota Manatee MPO, colleague of Eileen's. How important is it when your airports are connected directly with transit? You know, a lot of airports rely on rental cars and parking for revenues. So, but you also have success stories such as the Washington, D.C. area, Portland, Salt Lake City added transit directly to their airport. Does that make a big difference?
Dave, I have one word answer, game changer. That's been our experience.
We reprioritized our rapid transit to serve the airport for the Olympics for that very reason, so echo that.
Wow.
Yeah, I live in a city that's mere moments away from doing it, and we'll see at the end of the summer what the impact is to your question. But yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Great question, Dave, though. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, game changer, not just for the major events, but for your economic development growth overall. Another question?
Good morning, Paul Cahoon, Senior Systems Engineer with Init. To the FIFA host committees, are you guys communicating with the other host committees of the other cities to provide suggestions to kind of, because we know fans will travel to games throughout to try to make a synchronous experience for them when using transit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a whole schedule of meetings and, Zoom calls, team calls that take place every week from the CEO level to the operations level to the media level. All of these subcommittees do weekly, check-ins, mostly with the 11 U.S. cities, but then quarterly we've been meeting for the last few years with all 16 cities, right? With the cities in Mexico and in Canada, and gathering in a location designated by FIFA, and everybody goes, and it's a great networking opportunity, exchange of ideas. But yes, those meetings and those conversations, are currently underway and have been underway. And then on top of that, obviously, we by now know each other, and so we can pick up the phone if we have a question about Kansas City, or how's New York, New Jersey doing this, or Philadelphia, whatever the case is. So yeah, that's probably one of the strong points. I have to say that there's a great network especially within the 11 U.S. cities.
Okay, back there.
Hi, I'm Parag Agrawal from Columbus, Ohio. Karina, you're a great moderator. Eileen is a great friend. She runs one of the most innovative MPOs in the country. My question is, if you look at the FIFA World Cup in terms of the ticketing prices, different transit agencies are using different policies. Like New Jersey Transit, they came up with a policy of having $150 ticket, right? The governor said they will not subsidize the tickets for the FIFA World Cup. SEPTA, which is the adjacent transit agency, they said they will not raise their prices, and the ticket prices are still $2.90. Boston MBTA, their prices will be around $80 per ticket. So again, do you have any best practices, benchmarking of how these transit agencies should welcome a big event like FIFA World Cup?
From the planning, from the MPO metropolitan world, as a region, Southeast Florida region, we're one of the largest regions in the nation, almost 6 million between Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade. So we deal with this because we have a lot of inter-regional trips. The number one trip is Broward to Miami-Dade, and the reverse AM/PM peak. So we've worked towards a goal of interoperability of our transit systems in terms of our fare, using the same ticket, if you will, and accepting it across modes. It has taken us, I'm going to say, well over a decade, can I say decades, of a dream to get there. And that's just for our sustainable everyday workforce commute, which is our number one goal. So doing it for major events is important, and I think that dialogue is taking place. And I really like what you said earlier about having these agreements in place in advance are very helpful to us. And I think people are open to the idea, and what you've said, I think everybody in this room agrees. But working towards that, when you're working on multiple agencies, just think of LA. Or think of San Francisco, all the operators that you have in that space, much more than us. Getting everybody to the table and agree to that interoperability of the fare collection and the fare period, that's a challenge. And again, partnerships and things like that. But I love your comment. I think we need to embrace that now and move towards that goal.
And I'll just say really quick on the SEPTA front, I'm very, very proud of SEPTA for working with Airbnb to ensure that those rides home stay at $2.90. I think it's been a huge point of pride for them, and it was very, very hard earned, and it was by working directly with Governor Shapiro. So it's partnerships at every level throughout the state to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll just say, call me the Canadian in the room, but surge pricing on transit for FIFA World Cup is wrong. It's exactly opposite to best practice, where like you'd actually want your ticketed almost to be inclusive of transit. That didn't happen, but that's actually where you want to go. So I just say that it's we need to be supporting it, not doing anything to disable the opportunity.
All right. That was a great, passionate last question for this panel. We're a little bit over time.
That could have been a panel,
yeah, nothing like transit to get this panel fired up, which is great. Thank my panel, really wonderful. Just sort of the last comment. Yes, thank them. Bear in mind that as the Olympics, are 2 years from now, Prague from Columbus, there are scores of cities that are going to be hosting Olympic events. They're not all in Los Angeles. So these challenges that they mentioned here, coming soon to a community near you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much to Reed, Aileen, Del, Jose, Ray, and of course Karina for this great panel. If I can invite you to stay, we're going to have now a fascinating keynote before the networking break. We're going to be looking at one of Europe's largest urban transit networks and the innovation that they're leading. So we will be starting in 1 minute, just after the photo. And there we are, getting ready for the World Cup. Hoping Scotland will win this one. Perfect. Thank you so much again to our panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aileen. Perfect. Perfect. So if I can invite you to have a seat, take a seat. We're going to have our next keynote now. I am absolutely delighted to welcome on stage Carlos Acha, the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer of EMT Madrid. He is leading the city's public bus operations, where he leads the digital transformation of one of Europe's largest urban transit networks.
Thank you, Tim. And okay, let's go. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, John. Thank you to CoMotion for giving us the opportunity to be here today to show what in EMT Madrid and how EMT Madrid is scaling public value through integrated urban mobility. Before I start, I would like to tell that as CoMotion means real time, I have to say that tomorrow we have a clear use case in Madrid regarding mega events. We have the semi-final of Champions League, Atlético de Madrid against Arsenal. It means moving more than 100,000 people in a Labor Day, not in a weekend. This is extremely complicated every single day, and this case including 7,000 people coming from London. Okay, coming back to the presentation. I have to say that we are evolving from being a transit operator to the mobility enabler for the city of Madrid. And I'm going to try to show you how this journey is being, hoping it will be useful for your experience. In Madrid, we know public transit is not just operating a company. It's not just to define a network, frequencies, and accomplish the day-by-day services. We understand public transit as a set of different actors, all of them acting as in a coordinated way. Operators, public and private operators, ride-hailing, micromobility, regulators, infrastructure managers. And we spent in the past a lot of time trying to integrate them. As engineers, probably integrate sounds good, but this is not enough for citizens. Mobility change appears when the actors are not separate pieces, but parts of the same reality in the city. We have to understand public transit is shaping access to jobs, services, and opportunities across the city, and we have to understand that public transit supports social inclusion, equity, and quality of urban life. A quick figures about our company. EMT Madrid is the public operator for surfacing urban mobility. It's a 100% public company owned by Madrid City Council and Madrid City has placed its trust in the present and future of mobility in our company, in EMT Madrid. Our main activity is operating the bus network and the bike sharing system. And we are operating a 100% clean fleet, diesel-free, in an accelerated electrification process. In fact, this is our main figures, 2,200 buses with 11,000 stops. Currently, 480 buses are electric. By the end of 2033, the entire fleet will be electric. This has been a big effort and a big investment, not only in fleet, but in infrastructure associated and processes. Believe me, finding new financial models, European funds is not easy at all. Additionally, the bike service is every single day growing, and we are managing around 8,000 electric bikes. In addition to bus and bike, we are operating 29 parking facilities and 4 mobility hubs. I want to dedicate some moments to mobility hubs because these infrastructures are becoming real game changers in the mobility of Madrid. They are a critical piece to activate clean public transport, not just in buses, but all the actors that are playing in Madrid. A mobility hub is a new concept for the city. We are converting traditional parking into hubs, and this is activating the virtuous circle of public transport. That is, in a quick way, electric, connected, smart infrastructure, customer connected, intermodality, everything. This drives a higher adoption of public transportation in the city, not only moving people to the bus system, but combining all the different modes. Mobility hubs are physical spaces in the city center where the users have access to integrated mobility services acting as multimodal points. If we put the focus in technology for a while, for us it's a management lever, not just a tool. Fleet, infrastructure, citizens now are totally and permanently connected. Smart mobility means put the focus on the customer experience. Fleet electrification is not just changing gas or diesel buses into electric ones. It's starting the process for an active use of IoT, for enabling the IT and OT convergence, and a much deeper use of data. For us, data is a process. In this process, we always find 3 steps. First of all, the electrification brought sensors and IoT. In a second stage, these sensors started to interoperate, and that activated the connected mobility, the collaboration, and the new concept of mobility as a service. I'll talk about for a while in the next moments. This way of working is creating a new ecosystem. Is not a set of separated operators of systems, and the pillars of the new mobility as a service concept are infrastructure digitalization, data and AI management, and digital security and resilience. As we know, we are managing personal data and increasing dependency on these systems. Digital security is every day more important. And this is bringing us a new evolution of mobility as a service. Traditionally it was information, plan your trip and pay the trip. And now this is evolving to 100% real-time management. All the actors need to be operating in real time. The experience of the user will be conditioned if one of the actors is not playing real time. systems in interoperability, not just integrated, and understanding the relationship between different modes. Ticketing, we need simplicity, we need to develop revenue management systems in order to combine different models, different modes, and make public transport more affordable and more attractive for people. And CRM, many people said that CRM was not valid for urban transportation. We know, we understand that different people, not all of them need the same receipt for transportation. So CRM is clearly a key player now. Connected mobility offers a better customer experience, and we want to achieve the goal not only for improving existing services. We are developing new services and we are creating new business models. Using data analytics is the way to give the right answer to every single problem. Offering real and scalable solutions for the city by using data brought us new BRT lanes, including ADAS for road safety, including a computer vision model into the 2,000 buses that we are currently running, demand responsive transit service pilots, and why not autonomous vehicles. We have been running with an autonomous vehicle for more than 2 months with 7,000 users, and people who was some threatened about the use of autonomous vehicles. Now many people is convinced that in Madrid. Using data is part of a journey of digital maturity. This journey is not technological at all, it's organizational. Maturity has stages too. We need accessible and governed data from unified sources, data quality, easy access. This is the first step. When we have data accessible, we can have operational and descriptive analytics. Then predictive models arrive and automation come into play. And finally, we find operational or operative artificial intelligence to make real-time decisions. This is understanding, anticipating, and supporting automated decisions. And that decisions contribute actively to create public value in the city. We believe that transportation is creating public value. This is what we move from management to mobility level. And this is how EMT has evolved and now is a key player in decision-making and a decision-making actor in the strategy, city sustainable strategy called Madrid 360. The city mobility plans are designed by our company, and we are a very, very active part of the roadmap towards climate neutrality in 2050 in Madrid. As I said before, public transport requires significant investments, and it's essential to ensure its efficient use through decisions based on experience and management capabilities supported by data and analytics. It's important to creating public value needs to be measured, and for us it's quite important to manage with KPIs, and is the way to check that things are working properly. In terms of KPIs, let me give you some quick examples. Bus and bike demand. We have very, very impressive figures in 2025, representing a clear improvement over 2024. 7% of growing in the buses services and 39% in bikes trips. In terms of quality of air, today air quality in Madrid is better than ever. Madrid is complying with the European directive for the third consecutive year, and only a few cities can say this. NO2 reduction is very, very relevant too, and obviously mobility contributes actively to this. In terms of customer satisfaction, we believe we have very, very, very impressive figures, especially with significant improvements on information, security, customer service, comfort, and accessibility. And in the bike services, the most important thing is that huge improvement of use is keeping 98% of users recommending the service. In terms of accessibility, for us is critical, accessibility and territorial or social cohesion. 98% of the citizens have a bus stop within 300 meters, and the figures for accessibility, you can say that is very, very impressive. We used to include here the contactless access in order to make transportation simpler. To take away, just finishing saying that a city with a good transportation system is a better city to live, is a better city to visit, to do business. Mobility is part of the city and interoperates with it. Madrid City 25 satisfaction surveys gives a huge impact to public transport. As you can see, is the third item that we can see there. And now Madrid is a better place, thanks in part to mobility. We hope to see you soon in Madrid. You are cordially invited to check what I'm showing and to share with you, and very happy to be here learning from you. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a packed morning. We do appreciate you all. We have a quick coffee break. Ask you to come right back here. We have an amazing panel. We also have the Mayor of Ponce, Puerto Rico over in the innovation stage, so make sure that you guys are checking that out as well. During your coffee break, we have some great demonstrations by our partners, some amazing innovations. So now's an opportunity. Go grab a cup of coffee. Go ahead and use that bio break, and please come on back for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started here in just a few minutes. Appreciate you all coming back from our break. And we've got a packed full day, so remember to check your app, and remember that you all can network as well within the CoMotion app as well. So if you haven't downloaded it, please take a moment and do so. And we'll get started in just a minute.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to grab a coffee and to check out some of our exhibitors. I would now like to welcome on stage Jeff Siegel, Senior Vice President of HNTB, and his panelists to talk about the culture of innovation.
Thanks for being here. Really looking forward to an exciting conversation. One of my favorite topics, talking about culture of innovation, looking at how we can drive new ideas constantly, not just when we need them the most. So with me, I have a really great panel. We've got really great diversity of perspectives here. First, Melissa Scott, sitting next to me. She is the CIO of the 6th largest city in the nation, Philadelphia. She holds a critical leadership role in overseeing the city's IT strategy, infrastructure, and operations. She's been a lifelong public servant, highly experienced, distinguished in public-private sectors. Most notably, she spearheaded the development of a license and virtual inspection application, state-of-the-art platform that allows the building regulation experts and inspectors to virtually remote inspect live streaming videos, photos, custom inspection reports. This innovation boosted productivity by an impressive 80% in the city. Also, next to her, I have Brian Brooks. Brian is the Vice President of Student Affairs, of Enrollment, Management, and Strategic Communications at Florida Polytechnic University. He's the Vice President of university that serves only 100% STEM dedicated public university. He oversees strategic enrollment, student access, institutional brand, and communications. Florida Poly is the home to Advanced Mobility Institute, one of the largest university centers focused on autonomous vehicle testing and verification, collaborates with federal government, US DOT, NASA, and Florida DOT on connected and autonomous vehicle research, is closely linked to SunTrax, the research facility, and recently designated as the home of Florida's Advanced Air Mobility Program. Thank you. That's much better. And then finally, Parag, representing a regional government agency. He's the Chief Mobility Infrastructure Officer at Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, WRPC. He advances Central Ohio's capital improvement plans, multimodal transportation network in Central Ohio, focusing on grants, regional funding strategies, and intergovernmental policy coordination. Under his leadership, MORPC committed over $52 million in new transportation funding. His 20 years or more experience across economic development, multimodal planning, and also served as the executive director of POC TPO, brings a really great vision to transportation and holds a master's in city and regional planning in Ohio State. So we've got some really great diversity of perspectives, as I mentioned, and I'm going to really start digging in, first of all, talking about building innovation cultures. What I really love here is we're going to hear talking about not only internal culture, but also external, talking about a region as well. So my first question, and I'll start this with Melissa, if you are ready to talk. What does it really take to build an internal culture of innovation inside your public agency?
So one of the first things that is very important is creating an environment where failing forward is common and where the team you ensure that mistakes are learning opportunities versus condemning your team for trying to figure out solutions. So in order to develop that, you do have to create a safe environment for everyone to test, learn, and to grow. Also to identify what the true solution is. How do we improve services for the residents in our case? And then intentional about what is learned. So one of the examples of that is we're working on our 311 mobile app, and during that time, 311 has been developed probably over 14 years ago, and challenged the team to, well, the mayor actually challenged us to build an in-house mobile app team. So the team said, okay, yeah, we're up to the challenge. We want to start rebuilding the current 311 mobile app internally. So we were new. My team is new to this. We've never built a mobile app before. So you can imagine what that feels like for them to be on the hook for building, you know, something that is the entire city uses. We have 1.5 million residents. But they dived in, and they didn't feel as though there was an issue if they made mistakes. They did it in a safe, controlled environment, and they're able to, we're moving forward, and we're getting ready to go live in June. So June of this year, we'll have the new 311 mobile app and the new mobile app team to develop that. And I do believe that the culture that allowed the team to be able to experience this in a way that was rewarding for them as well as the business in developing it was failing forward.
Thanks, Melissa. Brian, if you would, you know, we talked earlier about how you're attracting more students than ever to Florida Poly. Could you talk about how you're building that culture of innovation has helped you build that right experience for students that are coming to your university?
Sure, thank you, Jeff, and great to meet you, Melissa and Parag. Great to be here on the stage with you. So I'm probably coming to you from the organization that is probably seen as the culture that's probably seen as the least innovative in society, which is higher ed, higher education. Usually when we think about higher ed, we do not think about the word innovation. We have some great institutions across this country, but they're not known for places that move quickly. They're not known so much, you know, when they get involved in research, it often takes years to produce theories, a lot of concepts. So we have intentionally at Florida Poly, we're 11 years old. We're the fastest growing institution, university in the state of Florida. We're up 40% in 3 years in our enrollment. We're a STEM institution. And from the get-go, we have decided that we're going to be intentional about being an innovative institution. I often like to tell people that most universities and places of higher education, they're like an aircraft carrier trying to turn in a river. And we've always wanted to be a speedboat, you know. We want to be nimble, we want to be agile. We're a young institution. And so from the top down, we've attempted to be intentional about creating a culture of innovation. And it starts with the top. You know, the president sets that. He's a very innovative. All of us, all of the VPs, we come from business backgrounds, some in small business startups. And so that's the kind of culture we're attempting to create, and our students love it. I mean, they when they come to Florida Poly, from day one, they're already involved in solving large-scale projects, problems for the state of Florida and beyond. They're involved in those research opportunities. So that's how we do it at Florida Poly.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to move on to the next question that I'm going to ask you all to answer, but I'll start with Parag. So in taking it up to a regional level, how do you attract and retain the kind of talent that can drive innovation, especially when you're competing with the private sector?
Jeff. So I will start by saying, when we are talking about culture of innovation, what is innovation? Many times when we talk about innovation, we talk about some technology. Are you creating an app? Something to do with technology, right? We are trying to have innovation. So we, MOPSI hosted a Transportation Innovation Forum last year. And the question was, what is innovation? The thing that came out was like, innovation is a state of mind. Like you can innovate in your everyday life, any new idea, you're basically innovating it. You have to break down silos. I work for a regional planning commission, I work for a transportation agency, but we have to work very closely with our private partners. At MOPSI, we work very closely with something called Transportation Research Center. Transportation Research Center is something like Suntrax in Orlando. We work very closely with OSU, Ohio State University. There's something called Center for Automotive Research, CAR. And in Columbus, we have something called Living Lab. A Living Lab is basically comprised of various agencies like MOPSI, OSU. There's something called Smart Columbus. We all basically come together and we are basically working on three big ideas. Who's funding it? Honda. Honda has a big plant in Central Ohio in Marysville. Honda is a big partner. So basically, we all have to work together, break our silos, and to come up with a culture of innovation. The question was, how do you attract, how should I say, innovators, right? How do you attract the talent? How do you attract innovators? I agree what you just mentioned. Innovation in any agency starts from the top. You have to break down the silos. You have to look at what's going on in the industry, like AI, right? We talk about AI in transportation. So we have a working group in AI, and we always champion how we can use AI in our everyday work. But when we spoke to the staff members, there are some staff members who are discomfortable, who are uncomfortable in using AI, because they think, what does it mean to their job security? Okay, the agency is using AI, how will it impact their job performance? So here, good question, right? I will say basically how we encourage folks to come into public sector. Number one, flexibility. This is what everyone is looking for. Number second, before you look for a public sector agency, you should look at your area. You should look at your region. Nowadays, people would like to have a multimodal transportation options. Not everyone would like to drive to their offices. You need to have options. You can bike, you can walk, you can take a transit to go to office. Number second, the whole concept of these office parks are long gone. You need to have communities which are mixed-use communities where you can basically go for a happy hour in the evening. Innovation happens not in a very structured environment. Innovation happens when people meet and they discuss, and innovation happens over a drink of beer. So that's what happens, right? It's not only about you go to a meeting, you go to a conference, and you have a formal discussion going on. It's more about you are having these informal conversations with different agencies, and then the ideas come in. Thank you.
Great. Brian, you want to take that?
So, I think I mentioned that from day one, our students, when they arrive to campus, we put them right into an environment in the classroom where they're solving problems. And we want to get those wins early. Retention at universities, I think the national average is somewhere around 74% students stay in school to get their degree. In a STEM institution, it's much closer to high 50s, lower 60s. Because most of these students who arrive on campus, they've never gotten a B+ in their life, They've gotten all A's in high school. So when they get to the campus, it can be difficult because now you're competing, so-called competing, in an institution with your classmates who all have the similar mindset. None of us have had a B+ ever. How do we react to this? And so what we like to do is, instead of putting them in the books and forcing education that way, we try to put them on projects, research projects from day one. Get them involved in solving a real problem. Not some hypothetical problem out there that I spent a lot of time in college studying, a lot of hypothetical problems, but real world problems. And from day one, getting them involved in solving projects like that. I'll give you a great example. We had a student, first of all, our university is exploding. We don't have any room for housing anymore. I mean, we've maxed out our housing. We've maxed out our parking. And we were hiring these consultants to help solve our parking crisis at the university. And paying them, I think we paid them $200,000 or whatever to try to help us solve this parking crisis. They couldn't figure it out, for us. We had limited space. Well, we decided one day that we're going to go approach a class and see if a class at Florida Poly can help us solve this problem. This is a sophomore class. I don't even remember the name of the class. But a student got with about 3 of her classmates and said, we're going to try to solve this for Florida Poly. Lo and behold, the student and her classmates figured out how to solve a parking challenge at our university. She's a sophomore. So it's pretty amazing culture, I think, that just to sort of from day one get them thinking it's okay to take risks as long as they're calculated risks. It's okay to take a chance. If you're ever going to fail in life, college is the time to do it. Make some mistakes, have some failures, learn from it, and move forward.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just point out that's what I love about this topic and why it's so important for all of our organizations, including like my companies, just embracing that culture of innovation. You don't know where the best ideas are going to come from. And that's really what's driving new things to happen and new ideas. That's could be challenging, right? In a city that's old, right? Has a great legacy in our country. But you have been able to find ways to bring the talent you need to get things done. How do you do that?
So first, the attraction is finding an individual that wants to serve, because we're competing against large private companies, and we don't pay the same salaries. So you really have to want to work there because you want to serve and you want to have an impact within the city that you're working in. So once we get beyond that, I've been at the city for 11 years, and what normally happens is you say, okay, great, I'm glad you joined the team. Here's your desk, here's your laptop, sit here and figure it on out. This is your job. And then the next thing you know, it didn't necessarily happen to me that way, thank God, but a lot of folks, they look up 11 years, they're still at the same desk with the same laptop. and really looking for some direction and for someone to invest in them because they have a lot of great ideas, but no one's asking. So I created a 4-point pillar, and the first is to baseline. First is a matter of what should all the units know? How do we all talk the same language and have the same foundation? Platform engineers, what should they all know? Project managers, how do we know, what it is that we're doing, whether they're onboarding or whether they've been there for several years. Let's all make sure that we're all on the same ground. The second is upskilling. So when I started to look on how we can train all the employees, I have about 700. It goes anywhere between 6 to 7 because I have 100 vacancies at one time. So right now I'm at 6. So about 600 to 700 individuals, and I found out that we have 45 licenses for training, online training. I said, well, who are the elitists then? Because if you have 600 to 700 employees and only 45 licenses, that's kind of bad. So figured out where it was in the budget, went ahead and purchased 600 licenses. It's like, oh, we don't know if everyone's going to take advantage. Well, you won't know until you try. We can pay for the 600 this year. If for some reason we don't use all of them, then we'll roll it back the next year based on our testing, right? I'm always about testing, right? So, and my favorite words, we're just going to pilot it. Don't worry, it's temporary. We're just going to pilot it. So we pushed that out, and so the second level was upskilling. Everyone was so excited. They were excited to have access for free to tools and training, and we have a 60% participation. You have to baseline first before you can upskill. So those two were rolled out last year, and this year we're working on the next is mentoring. So how do we identify individuals to mentor the staff, and the idea is that, say for instance, you're working in cybersecurity, but you're interested in project management, and we do have that a lot. So now you can get a mentor in project management. It doesn't have to be in your perspective role or area. And then we provide projects where you're looking at to solve problems and actually get real work. And what it also does, it does cross-training, right, indirectly. So whether or not there's a job opening and then you decided you want to apply because you're interested in something else, this also helps with retaining, because you might have been looking for a job to do something else, and now we provided you the opportunities you didn't have before. Also, we create a pipeline from within our organization. Institutional knowledge is very important within city government, but upskilling is just equally important. Sometimes we're not finding a balance because we're not investing in our staff, and we think that we need to continuously go out and look for individuals, but when you get them, you're not investing in them. And then lastly, is my favorite of them all, is what I call the boot camp. So I have an opportunity to create a new department, and I need an IT director. So I asked my team, okay, who's in line? Who's ready to be an IT director? And they said, no one. I said, no one? They said, no, nobody's ready. I said, well, if they're not ready, it's because we didn't help get them ready. So the boot camp is it's a simulation for anyone that you have to apply, of course, to be a part of it, because we want to make sure that you're ready, that you can handle your work and be able to put part of this boot camp. But it's not a one-time thing. We're going to roll it out on an annual basis, and you can go in as many times as you want as you apply, and because however many seats we have. So we're still planning it. And the premise is that you get a scorecard when you come out. So it shows, okay, you did well in this, you did well in that, you're great in this. So everyone will score differently, but the idea is that now you have something to go off of. Now you can go back to your regular work and start to work on those things and go into boot camp again. But as we have leadership roles that become available, IT director roles, now we have a pipeline of not only individuals with a specific skill set, but the leaders of our future. So those 4 things I think are really important to drive what I call for the retention plan. And everyone has so far, they've been really excited about each of those pillars.
That's great, thanks. Thanks for sharing all those details. I've heard a couple times, you've already mentioned a couple of you about the role of leadership and the importance that leadership has in creating that right culture that sparks innovation. Could you talk about, Parag, if you're ready, you could start. How do you build buy-in at the executive level and then sustain the momentum that creates?
Thank you. So again, how to get a buy-in, right? I will say, to get a buy-in, you are trying to solve a problem. You are trying to find an innovative solution for a complex issue which the agency is facing right now. Come up with early wins, low-hanging fruits. The agency is trying to solve something. You can try to tie this with the funding which you have saved, the financial things which you have saved. You can have your matrices that basically says X, Y, and Z. But I will basically say one more thing over here. The main thing which we have to work on for a buy-in, like I'm a transportation professional, right? Think about transportation not only as transportation, but also as economic development. When we are talking about, let's say, in Central Ohio, we have something called Link Us. Link Us is basically an $8 billion transit referendum that will give us 5 BRT lines and $50 million annually for sidewalks and trails. If you go to your leadership and say this Link Us, although it's a transportation project, it's a transit referendum of $8 billion in the next 25 years, but this is also an economic development project. This is also an environmental project. This is also a housing issue that will help us to solve the housing problems of Central Ohio. It gets more attention. Same thing when we are talking about at MOPSI, majority of the projects which we are working on with Ohio Department of Transportation, we have an economic development lens to it. So basically, we are trying to invest in infrastructure that helps to create jobs, that helps to retain jobs. We are not only trying to solve the congestion issue of Central Ohio, we are trying to solve the economic development, we are trying to encourage economic development of Central Ohio. So again, one of the ways you can try to attract the attention of your leaders is to create these connections. We are talking about passenger rail in Central Ohio. We are working on 2 corridors of passenger rail in Central Ohio. So when we are talking to our governor's office in Ohio, what we are saying, this passenger rail is not only about moving people from Columbus to Chicago. This passenger rail will also help to develop smaller communities like Lima, Newark, Fort Wayne in the Midwest. It's about economic development. So again, these cross connections which you create, it gets more buy-in, because there might be some governors, some states who will not be passionate about passenger rail, but everyone is passionate about economic development. So those connections when you make, it helps to get a buy-in. Thank you.
So Jeff, I would say on that, and Park, that was really good. I think every leader should read the book, The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. Perhaps you've read it before. It's been around for a bit, at least maybe 15 years or so. He has an entire chapter of that book focused on the concept of shared vision and shared values. The real hard challenge of getting buy-in from people at the executive level is that you have to work to figure out what is the win for those that you're working with, or whoever might be above you. I mean, in my case, sometimes the win that I want doesn't align itself with the win the president wants, or another vice president wants. But if I want to get that win, I need to do the hard work of figuring out how my win can align with a win for them. And that's the real key. And I think that, if you're a successful, innovative culture where you're moving forward quickly and efficiently, the leaders at the top have figured out how to win together and not win on their own. So I would say that's essential to that, getting buy-in.
Great.
So buy-in, as far as my experience in every level, has always started with trust. And trust is it's not easy to gain. And so I'll start with my staff, because I can really manage leadership, because most of the time they're not the technicians, so I don't really have a hard time getting their trust, especially when I already have proven success rate. And I'll just bring up what I've done and say, well, I could do it again. They'll say, okay, well, how much you need? So that's pretty easy for me there. But the harder part is the trust of the staff and the team. And because they're the ones that's doing the work. They're professionals and they want to be respected for what they do. They don't want everyone just coming to them, giving them orders. They're thinkers, they're innovators, and the true innovation comes in when we build trust. So trust from myself, trust from my deputies and our leaders, trust from the individuals they work with on a regular basis and their managers. It's not just trust in one area, it's trust across the board. And the way that I start to build that is I start an environment of collaboration. I immediately start collaboration. When we're thinking about creating a standard operating procedure, which is my favorite thing to do, because I like to make it like the Jetsons. I come in, everything is so hard, and I'll figure out what process I need to put around it so I can just push a button and then it works. So, but what I do is I bring everyone to the table. No matter who you are, I invite everyone. I invite managers, I invite all the workers, and I bring them to the table, and I said, everyone's idea and thought counts here. I don't lead from the idea that only managers and leaders know everything. The worst thing you can do is come into the room and, as a leader, think that you know it all, you have it all answered, you're entering the room, there's a problem to solve, oh, I have the solution. No, sit down, listen, and we let everyone come together and identify what the solution is. And that's how I get the buy-in, and that's how I get the trust. And it works every single time. Because the most important part is that they are part of the process. So it is now their process. So now they are brought in too, because it's not something that Melissa and her team decided. It's something that we work through collectively. And I sit in the sessions, as painful as they are, as you know, as a CIO, because sometimes it's hard because I have to deal with leadership, with the mayor and commissioners, but I also have to spend time with my team. And that facilitation, a lot of that is making sure that everyone's voices is heard, because when you're starting a collaborative process, managers will still feel as though they'll try to make their team members to kind of get scared. And I'll say, hey, John, what do you think? You know, hey, Mary, what about you? And so just getting them, I get it started kind of, and then after a while, everyone gets used to it. And I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for incorporating our ideas. And I'll ask them how it's going. I'm like, well, we got a little bit more work to do, but it feels good, it feels better, and they own it.
Yeah, that's great. So kind of just to summarize there, I heard about making sure you provide the context, making connections, trust, and the term I like to use to build on that is radical collaboration. That kind of environment can spur the innovation from wherever your organization that you didn't even expect it to come from. So with that though, some things I've heard too is partnerships. So I wanted to kind of dive into that area. Not only, you know, cross-sector partnerships, private, public, wherever. Parag, you know, to bring up your economic development area, you know, the most successful innovation ecosystems depend on alignment between DOTs, economic development agencies, universities, industry, of course. Where does that coordination work well, and where does it potentially break down?
Thank you, Jeff, for this question. So as I mentioned, partnerships is the key. So I will give you a few examples. So at MORPC, in the last 2 years, MORPC has applied for and received approximately $21 million of federal funding from US Department of Transportation. Our region has received approximately $52 million of federal funding through US Department of Transportation, right? RAISE grants, Safe Streets Roads for All grants, everything. MORPC has received 4 Safe Streets Roads for All grants to enhance safety, roadway safety in Central Ohio. If you look at our partners, the local match is coming from. The local match is coming from Transportation Research Center, again, which I told you is like SunTrax. The local match is coming from OSU, Ohio State University. The local match is coming from Honda. So it's basically a public-private partnership, right? We are trying to enhance roadway safety. Yes, MORPC is the lead because we can apply for it. Honda cannot apply for those funding. But basically, we are coming up with these partnerships, working together, and going after grants. That's one example. Working with Ohio Department of Transportation is the key. As I basically mentioned, Central Ohio, if you are following the economic development story in the country, Central Ohio has gotten some big wins, like Intel. Intel is setting up a new plant that the time of launch is getting pushed back. Now it's 2029, but it's basically $4 billion of investment through Intel in Central Ohio. We have something called Anduril. Anduril is basically coming in Central Ohio with $1 billion of investment with 4,000 jobs. What MORPC and our partners are working on, we are trying to connect economic development with infrastructure planning. We have something called Get Ready Initiative going on. When you say Get Ready Initiative means you are trying to get ready for Intel. You're trying to get ready for Anduril to come to your community. Ohio Department of Transportation is funding those programs. So what we looked at, 20 minutes drive time distance, 40 minutes drive time distance of these big employers. And you will say around 8 counties and 46 communities fall within those 20 minutes and 40-minute drive time distance. So again, when Intel is coming, it's not the question of one county. It's the question of the entire region. The region gets impacted. So basically, we are working on these projects called Get Ready Initiative, funded by Ohio Department of Transportation, working with these 45 different communities to come up with a regional plan of that 40 minutes drive time distance. And we are looking for comprehensive plans. We are looking for housing issues. We are talking about workforce development. And we are also talking about transportation because the funding is coming from Ohio Department of Transportation, right? So again, a few of these examples in which you are basically trying to attract the private stakeholders, Honda, Transportation Research Centers, OSU. You're trying to work with Ohio Department of Transportation, Intel, Anduril. These are basically technology-based companies. We are trying to set up technology districts around those big hubs of employers. So that's the key, I will say. Creating partnerships, a public-private partnerships. If you're going for a grant, public-private partnership looks so good on your grant application. That's the key.
Great, thank you. Brian, I'm going to ask you a question I know you're very passionate about. How can academic research institutions better connect their work to real-world deployments?
Oh, wow. You know, that's a really good question, and it actually I was going to follow up with something Parag had said, but it actually ties right back to that question you just asked. You know, higher education is awful when it comes to partnerships. I mean, and I'm going to tell you why real quickly, if I could. We have, unfortunately, the reputation, this sort of ivory tower syndrome, where all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom is held with the elites at the higher ed institutions, and you can't access it unless you come and serve us and find, you're here to serve us instead of us here to serve you. And we've decided that we're not going to operate that way. And I'm going to tell you why it's a completely backward way of thinking in society to sort of function like that. And I don't think anyone intentionally does that, but you get into an elite mindset. It becomes institutional inertia where you're just like in solving abstract problems, hypothetical problems like I mentioned earlier. But I'm going to tell you why it's so important for the university to take a step towards business, small business, and startups, and to partner with organizations like that is because some of the greatest opportunities and greatest innovation will come out of the minds who are 18, 19, 20, 21 years of age. You know, and I'm not saying that it doesn't come from anywhere else, but I'm saying there's a whole lot of opportunity that comes from that type of thinking, because that type of thinking has not been limited by years, decades of learning how to do things a certain way. I mean, they're trying to figure things out. And I know that experience is important. Experience is important in the marketplace and in innovation. It's essential to have both, but don't sacrifice one for the other. You know, with our partnerships that we're about creating, we said from the get-go, we're not going to have a university that just sits up in the ivory tower and waits for people to come to us. We want to put students with partners now from day one, getting them the real world experience. Our students, by the time they graduate, they'll almost have basically, essentially, 4 years of experience working with maybe several different entities or organizations and getting that experience by the time they graduate. From the industry side of things, it's a different perspective. You might say, well, why should I take a chance on a college kid? You know, what do they know about life? Why should I make that effort to try to partner with the institution? And I'm going to tell you the reason is because you have an opportunity in your organization or your business to shape what might be an individual who would work for you for the next 10, 20, 30 years perhaps, or for you to build a reputation with that student, because who knows where they will go in life. They'll always remember that one organization, that one leader, that one mentor that poured into them at the start of their career. You have the opportunity to shape that work ethic, shape that way that they think, the mindset that they have, and the innovation that they have. So it's absolutely 100% critical that the university and the institution finds a way to partner with those of you out there in business or wherever you might be working.
Great, thank you. And while we did talk about all innovations, not necessarily technology, but we are at a point in our world right now where, especially with investments in artificial intelligence and technology, things are progressing so fast. That's a big part of how we innovate, right? So Melissa, I'm coming to you as CIO, and some of the things you've accomplished have been incredible in the technology space. What is the most impactful technology investments that public agencies should be taking on right now to spark that innovation?
So the first thing is, it really goes back to my original conversation about creating an environment where individuals can test and be able to incubate. One of the things, and this goes into the whole partnership as well, which the city doesn't do well, because we have RFPs, RFIs, we have a long drawn-out process, and how we can engage. There's so many rules. I've been at the city for 11 years, and the rules are, there's so many rules, and you're not even sure how you can really engage with a vendor or with someone that has a great solution, how many conversations you can have, and things of that nature. But when you think about AI tools and tools in general, I am working with procurement to figure out how can we incubate outside of the walls of the city. And what I mean when I say that is we're taking a lot of risks by going through the traditional path where we identify what the issue is, we document it, we identify what our requirements. Now we put the requirements out in RFP, we wait for the responses, we review the responses and have the demos. But what we find is that both sides are lying, okay? The city is not being truthful about their environment and how complex it is to the vendor, and the vendor is not being truthful about their capabilities and the type of team that they have. So then when we get married in this relationship, it's all wrong, right? And we want to get divorced within the first month. And it would be really great if we can partner with startups and institutions and individuals to state what the problems are, then allow them to work on the solutions, identify the MVPs, then contract based on proven solutions versus we have this hypothetical where we think we have it right and we don't, and that actually causes projects, it caused a lot of bleeding on both sides. A project that was supposed to end 2 years ago is now ending 5 years. Now the solution is it's not even useful at this point, right? It's useless because technology is constantly evolving. We missed 3 upgrades in the midst of trying to implement one thing. So when you think about AI, you think how everything is evolving. It's very important that we figure this out and we figure it out fast. Otherwise, the city's going to waste a lot of money because there's a lot of shiny objects, and we're really not quite sure which ones are going to really work. So that's the thing that I'm working on right now with procurement, so you can watch out and see how I make out.
Nice. So innovation and procurement, obviously a major focus for you. That's great. I know we're running close on time, so I just wanted to move forward, and I guess probably a little bit more closer to your home, Brian. What does the next generation of transportation technology workforce look like? How should we be preparing our students today to look like that?
Well, I tell you, the way that we should look at it, Elon Musk has a great quote. He says, failure is irrelevant unless it is catastrophic. And I think students of the next generation, especially, these Gen Z students, I got 5 kids now, and all of them Gen Z, except my last one. I think he's considered generational alpha. But I'll tell you, they don't think about life the way that we do. It's all tied back to the experience. How can I get the greatest experience? Whatever the cost is, you know, whatever. I want to get the greatest experience in life. And I think that the way that this upcoming generation sees it, now they've grown up on social media, they've grown up on Snapchat, TikTok. It's all, you understand, it's all experiential. It's that environment that they've grown up on. And I think the best thing for us to do to prepare students like that is to work with them in that particular environment of providing experience. Give them the tools they need. Let them work it out by trying things. You know, going down a rabbit hole, trying to explore a concept that might work, and really embracing that and equipping them with the tools to take those chances. I'm going to tell you a quick story, if I could, Jeff, just real fast. It'll be real quick. But I don't know if who in the room knows who Charlie Munger is, but Charlie Munger was a partner of Warren Buffett. And most people know who Warren Buffett is. You know, he's the mastermind, of course, right, that did all these stocks in Berkshire Hathaway. And one time in particular, they're in this massive room, and Berkshire shareholder meeting. And a young kid gets up on the mic and he says, Mr. Munger, you know, how do you solve I mean, how do you take chances? That's what he says. How do you take chances? Because it seems like in some ways you're risk averse, but you also take a lot of chances. Young kid. And Charlie Munger looks back at him and he says, I take chances. The way I do it is I always think backwards. I always look at the problem backwards. And the kid's like, what do you mean? Look at it backwards. And he says, when in doubt, always invert. Always invert the solution. In other words, look back. A lot of times we'll look and say, what is the greatest outcome? But he was making the case that you should look at what the worst outcome should be in any attempt to solve a problem. Look at what the worst outcome can be and ask yourself, can you live with the worst outcome? I say that story just because that was his mindset for years and years in that investment partnership. Can I handle the worst outcome? Most of our students, they're 20, 21 years of age. They don't understand what the worst outcome perhaps could be. They're thinking about the greatest outcome. But we oftentimes as a university will stifle them. We'll as an institution, will stifle that sort of risk-taking nature, and we'll basically put confines on that and try to protect that a little bit. And Charlie Munger, though it may seem he was making the case to be risk-averse, he was actually saying the opposite. He was saying, figure out how dangerous in life you could be, and can you live with that chance of experiencing that failure? Well, that's about experience. That's about taking a chance in the classroom or in the start of your career to take a risk, all right, to try something out. And I think that's the way to get after it with this generation. Give them the tools. Let them learn how to do things, and let them learn through failure. It's a big part of the learning process, and probably all of us in the room, someone might ask you, what are some of the greatest lessons that you've learned in life? Almost all of those lessons have been tied back to mistakes and failures that we've probably made along the way. Those have been the greatest lessons that we've learned.
If I can add something to what Brian mentioned on this university innovation thing. So I think one of the biggest disconnect is how do you scale up that innovation so that that innovation comes out of the lab and can help to find real-world solutions. We work very closely with these research organizations and everything. So we have around 58, like every MPO does, we have approximately $58 million annually to fund transportation projects. But we have our regular timelines, we have regular projects, road projects, X, Y, and Z, which we always fund. Just think about a single roadway project. How long does it take to build? Different studies, preliminary engineering, final engineering, X, Y, and Z, right? It takes years and years to build. So I challenge all of you in this room, how can we basically come up with an innovative way in which we can solve these infrastructure issues facing our communities? We have to think outside the lab and say, okay, a single roadway project can take millions per mile to build. It can take years and years through this bureaucratic process which you talked about. It takes years, procurement, X, Y, and Z to happen. We are talking about flying cars right now. It should not take years to build a five-mile roadway, right? So think about that. Like, what can we do? What can we do together? Private sector and public sector work together and solve those infrastructure issues which our communities are facing.
Great, thank you. So with that, I know we're running close on time, so we wanted to make sure to allow any audience questions. Any questions out there? In the back.
Hi. What's it look for federal funding at the local level, state level, at the university level? Because that's obviously how the wheels get greased in this country. Thank you.
That's a good question. I would say the state of Florida right now, I don't know if you know the news, but it's, you know, the last two budget cycles have been sort of interesting in the state legislature for sure. You know, we're thankful for the legislature stepping up to fund us from the state. I mean, we think that they've really helped. In Florida Poly, I would say, is probably easier to fund than others because of our success. You know, we graduate students with the highest salaries and the lowest amount of debt. We are #1 in both of those categories. And so we've become a story that's kind of easier for the legislature to fund, I think, on projects of that nature. But we're also 11 years old, so we're sort of proving ourselves still in culture. We haven't done as well on the federal side, and we've been working a little bit more at that. I think this last year we got maybe $2.9 million or something like that from federal funding this past year. And usually that's tied to Department of Labor, Commerce funding, or opportunities to partner with organizations. The great thing about organizations or businesses partnering with a state university is a lot of times you might struggle to fund a project, but if you partner with an institution that's getting state funding to work on projects, it opens up the door for you to access some of that funding as well. So it's one of the opportunities that we can provide on a financial level, which I think would be so important.
If I can just add what Brian mentioned, so I'm a bit optimistic. So I will say federal funding is there under the new Trump administration. It's not new anymore, but under the Trump administration. You just have to align your priorities with their priorities, and the messaging has changed. The messaging has changed. The question which Jeff asked was like, how do you get buy-in from the leadership? So again, you have to basically align your projects with their priorities, but the funding is there. Thank you.
So currently, the city of Philadelphia, we haven't seen a large effect with the federal funding, which is very different from a lot of my counterparts that I come in contact with at other conferences and so forth. So we've been blessed that way. Though we are still preparing for if funds were, it would be an issue if we were to lose large amount of funds. But right now, the position we're in now, we're pretty good.
We've got probably time for one more. Go ahead.
When it comes to innovation, how do you separate the signal from the noise when there's so many ideas, so many diversities and diverse people and levels of status? How do you separate the signal from the noise?
If I can take this. So for me, it's very simple. Innovation should have a practical usage. It should help, it should enhance the quality of life of one individual. Innovation that stays in the lab, yes, it will stay in the lab. But still, it has to enhance the issues which we are facing as a community. That's the key.
So this is a difficult one because we have a lot of shiny object individuals. Vendors go out directly to head of departments and try to sell a lot of things. And a lot of times the department head and the team, they don't even know what they're purchasing. And the issue within government, specifically in Philadelphia, is that we have underlining issues. we have foundational structure issues. And what I mean by that is a tool won't really fix the issue. Your process is not documented. You cannot tell me how to get from A to Z. So there's no way a programmer can program A to Z. And so as what the good part is, now being the CIO, and I've worked in Office of Property Assessment, I worked in L&I, I worked in Revenue, I was IT Director in L&I, and I've had various projects. So now the conversation that I have with the commissioners, I have that trust, right? Because a lot of them I already worked with when I was IT project managers. Others, they've heard of the projects that I've worked on. So they're more willing to listen to what I have to say. I'm also not coming from a place where I'm a dictator and trying to tell you, no, you can't have this, no, you can't do this. I come from more of a place that, yes, we can get this done, but there's a way to get this done correctly, or you could be like that failed project 5 years ago. Would you like to be like that? Right? And so, or you could be one of the successful projects. Would you like that more? And so trying to get the department and the teams to come together to really understand what is the problem, are we all clear on the problem, what is our KPIs, how are we measuring before we start looking at tools to understand our measures of success. And 3, are you going to really sit down and take the time and dedicate for us to document these processes before we go out to RFP? And that's the third one that's the challenge there, because everyone is in a rush and a hurry to get things done. So still working through it. It's not a perfect environment that I have now, but as the challenges come, I tackle them as they come and work with the leaders and the department heads to kind of slow them down and have them think through the process. And when you say slow them down, and government's like, oh, here we go, slowing everything down. It's not to slow down the implementation. It's really to make sure that we stop wasting taxpayer dollars, because that's really what's happening. And that goes to that conversation where I talked about we need to figure out how to incubate outside of here, because I pay taxes too, and y'all just wasting a whole lot of money and time. So those are the challenges there that we're dealing with.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, I found this conversation really interesting. I could go all day. I don't think CoMotion wants us to go all day. So I just wanted to say thank you, Parag. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Melissa. Really great conversation. And of course, you know, the engagement doesn't stop here. So we look forward to talking to you all about this later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, Melissa, Brian, and Parag. This conversation was a great reminder of why innovation is what CoMotion is all about. So we now have our lunch break. The Spain-sponsored lunch will begin at 12:15 for those who are RSVP'd. And this afternoon, we have a great program. So be back here for a 1:30 p.m. start.